Hi all and welcome to Guiding Light. I'm here today with my friend Ben. How are you, Ben?
I'm good, Chris. And yourself?
No, I'm good today, but I would tell you the truth if I wasn't, because that's obviously a very important thing to do. We are very honest with each other and we need to be, don't we? Because sometimes my health isn't very good and Ben hears about it, and other way around, and we help each other through. But enough about us two, because today we're joined by Sofie. So Sofie, nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
We're really, really happy that you could come along. And I think Ben and you contacted each other and connected through LinkedIn. Was that right, Ben?
Yeah, so I think we've had some interaction. You liked some of my posts. I think I liked your posts. And, you know, it intrigued me with like where you've been and what you've done in your life and all the things. So I thought I'd invite you on the podcast. Do you want to share... start off with like sort of sharing your experience, sort of how you got to where you are today and sort of some of the challenges that you've overcome or experiences that you've had. And then we'll get into some conversations and some questions.
Okay. Well, I find LinkedIn very useful because it's enabled me to see that some of the challenges I face, I'm not alone with them. Mm-hmm. There's other people like me who have had a late diagnosis of autism. So I was late diagnosed. The diagnostic process started in 2019, but I was fully diagnosed in 2020. And before that time, I pretty much thought I was having a very unique experience of, like in my professional life, and also like throughout my education as well, where I often felt lonely, thought I saw things differently to most people, sometimes found it hard to connect to people, or found it very easy to form very intense and very strong connections to people, but not much in the middle. Like there wasn't much. I didn't really understand the type of conversations that people have in offices, which are very superficial. Mm-hmm. So pointless conversations. It's like, oh, what, are we having a pointless conversation right now? And I'm always looking for the point of a pointless conversation, and just kind of those kind of feelings and experiences. But also, I've always found that I find it really difficult to speak my mind and really difficult to not speak my mind. So that's something that's come across more in terms of office politics that has been quite difficult. And it was with these kind of recurring difficulties that I eventually came to realize that it was something very different with me. And a really close friend of mine who I've known for over 20 years said that a lot of the difficulties that I was telling her about, her neighbor had experienced as well, and she had then been diagnosed as being autistic. And she, she's a very big voice within the autism advocacy world. And at first I was quite surprised because I'm very empathic and I have very strong feelings. And I had this kind of stereotypical image in mind of autistic people don't have empathy. And I was like, well, how come I start crying when someone else is going through some really difficult time? But then I realized that that's some kind of, I don't know, myth that someone has created. I don't know how they created this. And then when I did questionnaires, I realized that I was scoring extremely high on the likelihood for being autistic. Mm-hmm. And then eventually I went to my GP when I was encountering like a pattern in terms of work difficulties. It was always around communication. And I just, always felt very down and had anxiety around the whole concept as well. Didn't really know how to navigate office politics. I still don't actually, but now I have a diagnosis, so I feel like I've got like an excuse not to be good at it. But yeah, it's still kind of, I find it quite hard. But then on LinkedIn, I see that everyone with my diagnosis finds that kind of stuff hard. So at least I'm not alone.
I think it's really important. So I've just been diagnosed in February this year of ADHD and autism. you know, so I can really identify that. What was really interesting, what you said there is you thought you was unique, because I felt that too. Explain what you actually like mean for that. So I've suffered with office communication because I feel that I'm misunderstood.
Yeah.
Like they don't even know what I'm saying, or they think in my way, so I see things differently. And then that puts me on a back foot because no one else feels that same thing, and I'm like, oh, and then I'm in that awkward space. So explain what you meant by like feeling you was unique, 'cause I think that's really important.
Well, you know, in terms of office politics, like, so one thing I don't understand, like, people are a different person according to who they're with. So you will see people and they'll behave and even speak sometimes in a completely different way, depending on who's in the room. And then suddenly someone higher up comes in the room and they're completely different. Now, I'm not able to do this. I don't know how to be different. So I used to think someone has given everyone a script. And it's like, if this person comes in the room, you have to act like this. And if this person comes in the room, then you have to even say completely different things. Like, for example, let's say there's a new initiative coming from higher up, and we're told now we all have to do this, and they go, oh my God, this is awful. You know, how they didn't think this through. They don't know what it's like to be on the ground floor. That's why they've got this idea, and I'll be listening, and I take a while to make up my mind, and I'll be like, oh, okay, and then I'll think it through, and I'll think, yeah, I don't think that idea is that great either, but I might be less passionate and less loud about it, but then I'm listening to all these people giving their negative opinions, and I'm like, oh God, I agree, it's not that good. And then someone higher up who's given the directive comes in the room, and then the same person who is really negative, like, yeah, we can give it a go, we can do, and I'm like, what? They just did something completely different, and I'll be like, no, I think it's, and I'll be the one suddenly coming out with, I think it's crap, you know, and I'm like, I was the cautious one, the one that was open to it, and then, so that's kind of what I mean, and then I'm thinking, how come they know how to do this? Like, how come I don't seem to have these different scripts, because I'm only one person, and if I say something to your face, I will say the same thing behind your back. There won't be any difference, but that's what I mean, that I can't really navigate. Or like people in offices, they might have conversation about something, and I think it's obvious that nobody's really interested in the conversation. They're just making conversation to make conversation because it's polite or because it's uncomfortable being in silence with each other. And I'm like, why are we having fake conversations? Like, I don't really understand it. I'm like, what's going on? And it's like, well, how does everyone know when and then I'm like, okay, I'll get in on the fake conversation, and suddenly the fake conversation stops, and now we're all working. I'm like, well, how do they know to start the fake conversation? Then how do they know when to finish the fake conversation? Because now I'm getting in on it, and now everyone's stopping.
Do you know what? Like, I can relate a lot to this stuff as well. So Ben's, as he said, he was diagnosed early this year with autism and ADHD. I've got ADHD, but I was diagnosed about 2.5 years ago. I've not been diagnosed with autism, but both my kids have got autism. But a lot of the stuff you're saying here is really interesting, because you're talking about an office environment, all these difficult things that are happening. I haven't once spoken about actually doing any work yet, which is why, like, I think sometimes you can feel so overwhelmed, so tired, things are so difficult, because whereas others are in there and, like you say, living like the office life by the scripts that they've got and they can do it, they're just getting on with that, and then they're doing their work. Whereas people like us maybe are actually in there trying to navigate everything that's happening around all the work and stuff that we do as well. And some of the things that I question as well, like you were saying, like the people say, oh, we don't like that change or whatever, but then they don't say it when the person comes in. It's like, well, why not? Why not? Why? It doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
I don't understand it. And I think I read something that you wrote a little while ago, and it was really interesting. I think you used the term about thinking inside or outside the box. And you said, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like people think inside the box and they say to think outside the box, but I never think inside the box. And I love that. And I think you wrote it in such a way that you were finding things difficult at the time, maybe. And, you know, it was difficult to have to think differently to others. But businesses, organisations, the world need people to think differently and want people to think outside the box, which is what you're doing all the time. And I think Ben does, and I certainly do as well. So really interested in knowing what you kind of meant by that at the time. But do you also embrace the stuff, how you feel now that you've been diagnosed and that you do have a mind that works differently to maybe those other people in the offices?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So the thing with thinking inside the box, I feel like I don't even know where the damn box is. And what I do feel is that people want to put me in the box.
Yes.
But at the same time, their mantra is you need to think outside the box. So why put me in a box that I don't even see and then tell me to think outside of the box? I'm already outside of the box. I can't think in the box. Yep. So that's kind of what I feel. There's something. It's like I always feel people want to box me into something. The thing that I'm currently thinking and considering, because a lot of really important voices in the autistic and ADHD world. I mean, I'm officially or formally diagnosed autistic, but when I had autism specific therapy from the Moseley Hospital, we did think that there is ADHD as well, like very strong signs of that as well. It's just that I haven't had that formal diagnosis. I'm not sure if I'm going to seek it or not, because it's not really that. It doesn't really make that much difference. But what I find is that the people who are very, they have 30,000 followers or whatever, the big voices, they're all self-employed. And I have, for the last 25 years, been trying to find my way within payroll employment, working for other people. I do work in the mental health and addiction sector, and I'm very passionate about it. And I'm still trying. Like, I'm still trying to belong. And a lot of people tell me, why don't you, make your own way and find your own way, go self-employed. But I want to be that one autistic person who I can actually do very well within payroll employment. Like, I want to find a way to make it work. I do, it's since my diagnosis, what I find, the difference is that I almost have that little bit of leeway where if I do something that other people find jars, my biggest thing is my communication. So I do find it very difficult to be confrontational or to face conflict. And I find it very difficult to keep quiet. So that means that a lot of my communication is in writing, it's over email. And I find it very important to have a voice, because I've often felt like I wasn't allowed a voice, and I've never felt comfortable with that. So I do struggle quite a lot in employment, and my employer is very supportive in terms of what I've experienced before. But it's like I do have days that I come home and I'm crying all the way home because I feel misunderstood, but I do have hope. Like, there is hope. There is hope that there is change, and there's people like me within the organization. We get together once a month. They share their experiences, and they're very similar to mine. I'm in management. That makes a difference as well, because obviously the higher up you go, the more political it is. And so I'm trying to navigate a world which really isn't really set up for me at all.
I think that's really important what you shared there, and you are right. People like me and you need to be at that level. I'm a director in a business. Really, my communication probably isn't director material in what the world perceives as the right communication. But I wanted to, I really got the bit from you there around the box. I'm really important about the box, because I really relate to never feeling understood, and always I felt my whole life until my diagnosis 2 months ago that I've always been asked to be someone else.
Yeah, I feel that as well. But I have to say, I see myself as Marmite.
Yeah.
And the reason I see myself as Marmite is because when people love me, they love me.
Yeah.
And I can be myself with them. And I really feel myself really growing, like, and gaining confidence within the relationships where I can be myself. But if I'm not liked, because I think I'm very open and transparent, and I literally give people all of the ammunition they need against me. Because if you want me to say the wrong thing, because I'm so open, I will say the wrong thing if you ask me the right questions. And so that's what I find in employment as well. It's like I have these great relationships, and then I have these relationships that can be really hard to navigate. But then like in my current job, I've been there 3 years, and there's a few people where in the beginning I think there was like some jarring and there was some friction and they had to get used to me. But there's a few people that I now get on really well with because they've gotten to know me and they've realized that, you know, when I might be vocal in writing. I don't know what the right word for that is, but I might be opinionated because I'm quite opinionated in writing. But then I'm equally opinionated when something is good. So I will always big people up. I will always point out the good things as well. And I think the people who've given me that space to get, you know, for us to get to know each other before, like instead of just completely shooting me down, those relationships have become really good. But yeah, I've got relationships that have been great from the beginning because they've just taken to me, and I've sometimes I have, you know, when there's like an email communication where there's lots of people involved, and I point out something that nobody else apparently would dare to point out. I have these people emailing me saying, "Well done, you know, we need people like you. You need, you know, you're great. You're not afraid to give your opinion." So, but the only thing that I don't like about that is like they give me that one-to-one kind of boost. But I'm like, I wish they did that in front of everyone, so other people can see. The people that are unhappy with me voicing my opinion can see that actually there's people who are really happy about it. So it needs saying.
Do you find in that's a really topic thing? Because I've been in the corporate world since I started employment, and I've struggled to navigate. That's really important what you just said there. So I get that as well. Now, I get some people really embrace and love that because I think out of the box. I'm eye to detail where others isn't. I spot the mistake that no one else has in the room. But I then also suffer with the 5 or 6 people over here that gets frustrated that they just wanted to send that out or do that thing. And now they see me as a blocker and a problem because I've spotted something. So I can really identify with that. And it's sort of some of the stuff that's going on for me now. How do you actually deal with that? What I'm interested in, because, you know, you've been quite successful. You're in a management position. You know, that's an advocate in itself because, you know, 78% of autistic people don't work. That's the actual stat in this country. 78% of people. So we're in the 22% in long-term employment. That's a fantastic thing. So how do you so you have navigated it because you're still there. So how do you get past those things?
Well, I'm 49 and it's the first time I've stayed with one employer for 3 years. And I have to be honest, this time I told myself I wouldn't walk away as soon as there was conflict. So part of the reason that I am still here is because I've changed something within. I've just been like, what is the point? Every time I have too much conflict, I walk away, and before anything bad happens, because I'm so like, people in power, they sometimes do abuse their power, even if they don't want to do so on purpose. They, you know, they have sanctions and threats, and you know, if you write an email that someone doesn't like, then they might give you an informal warning for something that you've actually not done that wrong. This time, I worked through all of these things, so I've had challenges. I think I work really hard. So part of the reason why, I mean, I don't want to say that I work 10 times harder than anyone else. That's not what I want to say. But if I have a meltdown and I spend an hour, at my desk just in a complete state, what I will then do is, once that hour is gone, I'm most likely to make up for that time and work 2 hours late because I feel so bad about having lost that time. So my productivity is quite high, and I think that's how I've done it. It's like I've just not been wanted to be held back by it, and then I also think it's the people who are my champions. I literally, if you give yourself enough time, you will know who within the organization has your back. You will know who you can trust, and at present I've been there 3 years. I definitely know, I have a fair idea, and I think that's going to help keep me going. But I really want to. Yeah, I really just want to stay somewhere and see what it's like to be there 4 years, 5 years, and I don't think I'm going to get much higher up.
Hey, look, what I love about this, right, is the fact that you said you needed to change something within, because I also feel like you do around conflict. I really don't like it. And I pair that with the lack of self-belief and that kind of thing. So it's like, I used to always think, and I've been in the same job for over 16 years now, or the same company, not exactly the same job, which I find bizarre when I think about how my thinking is, which is you're going to do something, that's going to go wrong, therefore you need to escape before anybody finds out. But I haven't escaped, but that feeling keeps going on. So it quite clearly says that everything I do doesn't go wrong, but in my head it keeps saying it anyway. But what I've found over time is people within that organisation who I can talk to about who I am and how I feel now, which has only been available the last few years because it's only when I've started to know who I am. So, my line manager, for example, I can talk to her honestly about how I am. And you spoke about the days where you're having the meltdown and you can't do something for a while. Well, as a manager myself, and you said you're a manager, I would, people in my team, that's cool. I understand those things, and therefore I think people need the flexibility to work as they need to work to be as productive as possible. But that's very different to how maybe we used to think in the world, which is you sit at your desk for 8 hours a day and you work for 8 hours a day. And that isn't helpful for certainly me, and it sounds like not for you as well. But I guess the question I really want to get to is, as a manager, and you said that you get together within the organisation and talk to people like yourself and share stories, which is really helpful. But as a manager, do you feel like it's actually really helpful now that you're being open and honest, and maybe you can use that to improve the organisation and help others feel comfortable to talk as well about the things that maybe are affecting them in their day-to-day?
Yeah, so I find the relationships I have with the people that report to me 100 times easier than the relationships I have with anyone higher up than me. And that's the reason I have that is because the power dynamic is kind of like in my favor. So if they want to come to me and talk to me about, not feeling up to it, if they tell me that they've had a day where they haven't been productive, my line reports tell me that I haven't done anything today, and I'm like, yeah, that's okay. You'll do more tomorrow. Yeah. And if not tomorrow, then it will happen another time, because I trust that they will do the work that they're required to do. I find it much harder to be that open. And I'm not saying that it's because I can't do that with my line manager. Maybe I can, but I'm a bit more wary about saying I've been taken out by anxiety today, or today is just not I've not done anything. But I will tell my line reports. I'll be like, oh God, I've had a really unproductive day, and they tell me. So yeah, those for me, those relationships are, and
that's really healthy, isn't it?
Yeah, I think really so. I think so.
I think in terms of productivity, I don't know your worker dynamic, but I'm picking up that you've probably got quite a successful team and deliver quite a lot within the organisation, the same as me and my team. You know, so I think what I'm trying to say there is like the advocate of that actual process does work. I think sometimes we've got a mindset of, you must do 8 hours and you must do this and you must do that and you've got to do this at that time and so on and so on. But actually your method's similar to mine. If it's not today, it'll be tomorrow. Because if you're like me, I will do that work. But sometimes it just has to be on Ben's time. And that may well be at 10 p.m. at night.
So that's something that I really struggle with. So my husband is in a completely different business. He's in the media industry, and he will communicate with people in Australia, people in the USA, people on completely different time zones. So he doesn't care when someone is sending him an email, because and he's very flexible about his working as well. I mean, strangely, he works from 6 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock in the morning, then seems to have a nap for a 3-hour nap in the middle of the day, and then he works again, and then he has another 3-hour nap, and then he's still working at 9 o'clock in the evening. I mean, I couldn't work his hours. But something that I have is sometimes people tell me off because I'm they don't like it when I use the word tell me off, but they are telling me off, but they don't call it tell me off. They're guiding me, apparently. So sometimes people guide me when I send an email outside of hours, and they're like, you shouldn't be sending emails outside of hours. You should be putting on the delayed delivery. Now, I've tried to explain the delayed delivery. So the way it works is, firstly, the delayed delivery doesn't work until you're actually on your email. So if you put the delayed delivery until 9 o'clock in the morning, but you don't log in until 10 o'clock in the morning, it won't send at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's how the one at work. But also, let's say it's an email, it's a chain, it's where people are responding. And you have your email response, you put it on delayed delivery for 9 o'clock in the morning, but someone responds to the same chain at 8:30, then your email is not going to be in sync with what they said, and it will look like you haven't taken that into account. I've been trying to explain that for ages, but what I don't understand is, what's the problem about when someone sends an email? You can log into your emails when you want to read them. So if I send it at 10 o'clock in the evening, it doesn't mean that you have to read it at 10 o'clock in the evening. If you want to work 9 to 5, log in between 9 to 5, and that 10 o'clock in the evening email is going to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I just find that it's such a way we want to control other people. And I say we, it's not me. I don't care when someone sends an email. And there's a couple of people in the organization that send emails really late at night. But when they do it to me, because they know that I don't mind, and they know that I might be on later as well, especially if I've had a lot of meltdowns in the day and I have to make up for time, or I feel like I have to make up for time. And you can see when someone's online because they turn green, and then we're like, oh, hi, you're on. Yeah, let's not tell anyone that we're on. And there's like this secret kind of club of people who don't stick to the working hours, and I'm like, why can't we just be honest about it? Why can't we just, and then,
So I've had a similar thing. Like I used to send emails like 1 o'clock in the morning, because what used to get to me is I'd get home from work and I'd be overstimulated, and I'd probably go to sleep because I just can't If I get overstimulated, it just doesn't matter. I'll just become just can't function. It doesn't matter. When someone said meditate, and that really ain't happening either, is the truth, right? I'll go and read a book. That's when I'm overstimulated and having a meltdown, like I need to shut myself away in a dark room for me, and generally what will happen is I will slowly relax and I will probably fall asleep, right? But then I'll wake up at like 10 o'clock and I'll think, well, I didn't do that and that in a day because I wasted 3 hours. And I will start to do that. And I will send an email at 1 o'clock in the morning and people will go, well, why are you working at 1 o'clock? And, you're nuts and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but I need to do that. But also I need a compulsion in me that I get overwhelmed. What people don't realise is if my email box gets so full and my workload gets so many, I also get overwhelmed, and then that causes more meltdown. And then what happens with more meltdowns, I do less, and then that box gets even more cluttered until it's absolute crisis, and I literally cannot cope. that is literally my life, right?
Yeah.
So people don't understand it, and it's really important that you share that, because I think that people listening to this podcast might be able to identify that and maybe not have an autistic diagnosis, but can get that. You know, I just shared to Chris before you come in, I've got 29,000 unread emails in my email box. I get 4,000 emails a week. I ain't going to read those.
No.
You know, but then what I'm sitting here today is I know there's that many, and now I'm getting overstimulated
You're
about it.
thinking about it, aren't you? Yeah, exactly.
So I think
You
that's-
said there, mate, I'm going to jump in quickly, because you said when you obviously had to go to sleep and all that kind of stuff, you wake up at 10 and you feel like you need to do your work because you've had 3 hours wasted. I think it's important to recognise you didn't have 3 hours wasted. What you've done is you've worked out what you need to do to not burn out, not ruin tomorrow, not ruin the day after, but to get back into a place where you can be the guy you want to be at work and become productive again. So I know you didn't mean it in that way, but I think it's a really interesting thing to think about how we use the language on ourselves, because we probably hear it from other people.
Yeah.
And actually, that's not right, is it?
Do you experience this? I experience this where they say I'm the best problem solver there is, but people get frustrated that I'm that problem solver. Do you experience that quite a lot? And what I mean is there'll be a situation at work, no one can get the answer, a problem or whatever, and I often come up with that answer. But I either can't articulate how I got there because I just don't know myself. And then that frustrates people because I can't talk through the logical stages that they need. You know, I go from A to B and that's the solution. Do you experience that? Do you struggle with that communication piece?
I sometimes find it hard to make myself heard, to be heard. So sometimes I have really good ideas, but yeah, the non-articulation or the not able to articulate or like have a voice, that does happen sometimes. I especially hate anything in a group. For some reason, I can't get my voice heard in that group. So it's not that I can't explain how to get there. I just can't even like get people to listen. Or sometimes I say something and then 2 minutes later someone else says the same thing, and that's what everyone jumps on, and I'm like, I just said that. What's wrong with, like, it's like this person just took my idea. But then when that does happen, there's always 1 or 2 people in the room who realize it and then come and tell me after and say, oh yeah, that was you who said that.
When they should talk up when they're in there and kind of advocate for the fact that actually you did it. And that's, I think, interesting.
So I got out on Thursday at work. How did it make you feel? So we were going through a situation where we was in this call, saying it's going wrong. We was about 8 minutes into the Teams call. I've sort of said, well, can't we do this, this and this? Basically, it was getting all the suppliers for this particular product together because they're all blaming each other, right? So I was like, well, can't we get everyone together and have a conversation about it? The conversation then goes on for another 11 minutes. And then someone else on this call says exactly the same stuff. And the person leading the call goes, well, blah, blah, blah said that, so we should do it. And I'm like, I said that. But what it done to me was make me feel inadequate. And then I'm anxious. And then I'm like, next time we're on a call, just say nothing, Ben. Do you get the same thing?
Yeah. So I do feel like that sometimes, where I just think, is there something wrong with me that people don't jump on my idea? But when someone else has the same idea, they do jump on that. And I'm not saying that it's not something that happens frequently where I work now, but it's something that within my career I've definitely experienced more than once. And I find it quite hurtful. And then you just think, well, what's wrong with me? You know, why can't they take me seriously? But
so how have you overcome that? So when you experience that, like you sort of go, but what I've noticed with your stories, you go back, like you won't let it get you down, and you'll do it again. So some of your posts on LinkedIn, you know, you'll share again, or you'll share that experience again. So what do you do in that period? Because I really struggle with doing it again. Like it sort of knocks my confidence so much that I'm like, oh.
Well, I struggle as well, and my problem is that I will end up writing an email about it to someone, and then I get into more trouble because people don't like it. People don't like it when you call them out, even if it's something that, and that's, I haven't, not with my current line manager, but one of my previous managers, not necessarily within this job, but said to me, Sofie, it's not what you say is true, it's how you say it, and it's the fact that you put it in an email and you're not having the face-to-face conversation. But when I have face-to-face conversations, I often don't feel heard. I often feel people, I don't know, seem to just not take notice of what I'm saying. So it's always like a perpetuating circle. But yeah, I don't really. I do make the same mistakes. It feels like I'm making the same mistakes over and over again sometimes.
So there's an important thing there, because that has been a theme through my career. You're always right, but it's the way you communicate, Ben.
Yeah.
And the problem I have is I just don't know how to communicate differently.
Yeah, I have that as well.
And it goes back to the original conversation about chit chat, or why do people say one thing to you and then someone else walks in the room. I cannot do that.
No, I can't either.
I've got myself, and unfortunately that's all I've got. Like I haven't got 5 Bens, I've got me, and I say it as it sees. So if I like someone's jumper, I'll tell them. But also if I don't like their jumper, I'll tell them. That's,
yes.
If you're my boss and you're asking me to do something and you're asking 3 of us, they may do it because you're the boss. But if I don't agree with it, I'm the one that's telling you. Do you get that?
Yeah. No. So that's definitely, and that's something that I really, again, I'm going to say it's a previous boss, and not necessarily within this employment, but I definitely thought that when we had difficulties, it was because I was too honest, and then I saw that the people that they preferred were people who were actually much more negative behind their back than to their face, and I was very confused about that, because I'm like, I'm actually more positive about you than and I did actually say that once, which got me into huge trouble.
So I think it's really important that you're sharing this stuff, because I get the same. So people used to say like, that I see them as people pleasers. I haven't got that ability. I just am, and it's really important you say that. And like, because what I want, is what I struggle with is, I go, but I'm this. Like you see what you see with me is what you get. There's no hidden agenda, because I can't play the politics.
No.
So I just don't go there. I'm just out with it. I'm like, boom. And a lot of people can't receive that, so they see me as a problem.
Yeah. Or
they manipulate it. And it's really important that you're sharing that, because I get all these struggles. Like I sort of understand it, because obviously, I've been diagnosed with autism recently, but like I've had these problems. I really relate to that stuff. Does it frustrate you that because I can also see it. Like I see it in others, right? And it really frustrates me, because the person that I want to see it can't see it, and the person that they don't like the most is me.
Yes.
But I'm the most straightforward one in the room, and I get really agitated, and my anxiety plays up.
Yeah, so it used to be something that frustrated me enormously. But what frustrates me, that sometimes I get told that I'm rude, that I'm aggressive, and I never understand that, because I always think I'm just straight to the point, and I never see myself as aggressive. But when people hear something they don't want to hear, they immediately put that label onto it, and then I think, but if you heard what other people are saying, like maybe not to you, but about you, it's much more aggressive, and it's much more rude, and it's much more negative. But because I'm honest, you're just like, I'm the bad person, and I just sometimes feel like, and I can see that with other people who do have the autism diagnosis, that they are getting vilified sometimes. And I'm not saying that's something that's happening in my current work, but it's definitely something that I've experienced, and I'm like, I'm such like, I kind of love everyone. So that's why. That's even makes it more hurtful, because it's very rare that I dislike people. I might dislike their behavior. Like I don't like it when I see someone saying one thing in front of a person and another thing behind their back. I won't like that, and I do sometimes. Maybe I'm a bit judgmental about that, but then it's really hard when I'm being judged for being the same, like, and not having 2 faces.
I think it's really important, because it's an ADHD trait. I have black and white and no grey. So it's either good or bad. I like you or I don't. Right? I generally like more than I don't. So that's what you're describing there. Like, I don't have a grey. I don't. Someone and so and the problem, you mentioned Marmite because I laughed because actually that's what I am. People love me or they hate me. There's no grey. I never get Ben's all right. I get brilliant.
Yeah.
Can't stand him. Literally that.
Yeah.
Right. And the truth is, I feel that the people that go I can't stand don't understand.
I think, right, since I've started to understand me, and certainly when I came into recovery from like my gambling addiction, my alcohol addiction over 6 years ago, and then the ADHD diagnosis and starting to know who I am, I think this was really hard, by the way, but starting to get to a place where it's kind of like, I don't really mind if people like me or not. That's made my life so much easier for me because that wasn't like that. I was a people pleaser all the way along. Whereas now I'm much more like, well, this is me, so have me or don't, and I'm pretty comfortable with that, which is a really nice place to be, but it took a long time. But the communication things that you've both been talking about is really kind of interesting because there's a couple of things that popped into my head. The first one is, organisations talk about different kinds of communication. Different people do communicate differently. We should embrace it and all that kind of stuff. But I think people's perception still is that there's a certain way of doing things.
Yeah.
And it might not be the way that we might like to do things, for example. It's like I never used to answer a phone at work because I didn't like talking on a phone in front of people, so I would ignore it. Till I got a mobile phone rather than a desk phone, I could go away and talk to people. I would much rather do it via email, that kind of stuff as well. But you were talking about in meetings, you say something and then somebody else says something a little bit later. You said the same thing. And also I get it as well, where I think something slightly different, but something's been discussed, it's been covered, we've got to the answer, why don't we move on? Do you think sometimes actually it isn't people jumping on our ideas, for example, it's just that it might take different people with different ways of thinking longer to recognise that what we've said might be right? And I don't mean, some people, might jump in and say it's their idea, but other people, maybe they're mulling it over in their head for a while, having to talk about it to get to where we got to. Because like you said, Ben, you're a great problem solver. You get to that problem solution for that problem quickly, but can't then explain how. Then they need to work that in their heads to feel comfortable about it. And then we go away feeling like, oh, why didn't they listen to me? I feel bad. But actually, the only reason they got to that place was because of what we said. So maybe it's that kind of, we need to change that feeling in or thoughts in our head as well, which is really hard. But because sometimes people do just jump in and nick your ideas. But sometimes I do think it's because we just get to things more quickly.
I think with like autism for me is I struggle with that ability to process that. And that's a difference that I'm finding between ADHD and autism. So I struggle to process that because it taps into my feeling of not being heard, rejection, overwhelmed sort of feeling. It's really, 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 really hard. I'm an advocate. For me, he's like, I want notes at every meeting for that very reason, right? Because also I want it to drive people crackers because I want notes. I want notes before the meeting, so I know what was discussed last time, and I want notes afterwards. And people really struggle about that. But like, it's the ways of working. It gets the best out of me. I think sometimes we become good managers because we get the best out of our team because we see things from a different perception in the world. So we become more, or I'm talking from my experience, I show more empathy. I'm also, people will say, an absolute pain because I drive continuously for improvement. But I empathise, but I get the best out of my team. People struggle to get the best out of me. That's the truth, because they don't get me. I'm not saying that that's currently in my position at work, but there are certain members that will get the absolute best out of me, and there are certain members that switch me off. And it's not that they've done something incorrect, it's that they haven't been able to get in here for me. They've overtalked me, they've took my idea, they've misunderstood me. Not necessarily wanting to, but they just do. So it's really important. Like, I'm becoming a big advocate for autism because I now know I suffer with it. I didn't know what I suffer with. My autism really took me to wanting to die because I just felt so disconnected and misunderstood, and I felt like I was fighting the world all the time. Put us like constantly fighting people because why am I misunderstood? Why don't no one get my ideas? How do I get there? Oh, I can't get to that bus stop. Why can't I just walk down the street normally? You know, why can't I just, you know, send 3 emails? Why can't I just go home at 8 o'clock? You know, no disrespect to anyone that can do 8-5. I'd love to do 8-5, but I get frustrated when they're out at 5:01 because I'm never like what are they doing? Don't they want to work as hard as me? Do you get what I mean? That's just me. It's weird sitting here saying it because I've never really shared that stuff, but that's what goes on for me. You know, I'm still there at 8 o'clock. You know, someone said this the other day. It was really important. They said, Ben, if you work a 40-hour week with autism and ADHD, you've done 80. And he's so right. That doesn't necessarily mean I've done 80 hours of physical emails and that. In here, I've done 80, and that's why I get, or in my experience, I get a bit of burnt out.
So, well, brilliant. That's what I was just about to come on to. So on that, and you both feel free to answer this. I know it's your episode, Sophie, but you know Ben knows about all this stuff as well, and he's living it. You know, on burnout, on that kind of stuff, on overwhelm and stuff. How do you make sure either you don't get to that place, or if you do, what do you do to try and recuperate, recover, and get through things? We spoke a lot about work, but there's obviously lots of things we need to do outside of work to maintain a balanced, healthy life.
Well, yeah. So at the moment, I'm experiencing more like periods of burnout than usual because I am going through a little bit of a more challenging time at work. And actually, I was really listening to what you said about being liked and wanting to be liked. That for me is a very big cause of burnout, is when I feel like nobody likes me, or and I'm currently I mean within one of my previous line management relationships, I was continually told that everyone higher up than me hated me, like continually, like they all hate you. You know, I'm here to defend you. I always have to defend you. If you didn't have me, you wouldn't be in this organization. And even though that's quite a while ago, and as I said, not necessarily within this current employment, as soon as I'm getting into conflict with anyone, I'm reaching burnout straight away because it brings me back to that dialogue all the time. I keep thinking that I'm not liked, and so what I'm trying to do is really connect to the people that I know really appreciate me, and I'm spending much more time calling people and having chats with people who really understand me, and to try and seek validation. But when I had therapy which was focused on being autistic, she said that I'm still seeking validation too much from outside of me, and I should be finding it from inside of me. So I should be making a list of all the things that are great about me, all the things that I'm good at. You know, and empathy is one of those things. I am extremely empathic, and you know, I do a lot for my friends. If they want my help, then I'll be the first to help them. If they're in a difficulty, they'll call me, and I'll be able to give them the solution. And so that's kind of what I try to do. I try to focus on the positives, and you know, and I do still need other people to validate me, and I wish I needed that less.
I think it's progress, though, isn't it? It's work. First thing is about understanding it and recognising it, because I certainly never used to recognise it at all. And then when I did, it was very, very hard. And don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect by any means at this stuff, and I still get hurt by things. But on the whole, I can then reset myself and think, no, hold on a minute. Are you happy with who you are? Yes, in that case, things are okay. It's a work in progress. But the internal validation bit there is so important. Certainly me and you have spoken about that a lot and done a lot of work on it. It does take a lot of work to you know, feel like you're okay yourself. It's important.
Yeah, that's what I tell myself. Like, I know that I'm a really nice person, and I know that I really care, and I'm, you know, I am genuine, and I might not always say it in the right way, but I'm honest. So I think, well, if people don't like me, then wow, what do you want? Do you want someone who's dishonest? Do you want someone who doesn't care? Do you want someone who isn't passionate? Because I'm extremely passionate. I'm very passionate about what we do. You know, we're in the homeless an addiction sector, and for me that's really important to help these people find a better future and to increase their recovery capital. And sometimes when I'm annoyed about something, it's about something going wrong for the clients or the recovery workers working with the clients. So it's about them, and I'm like, well, if you're unhappy with how I express myself when I'm advocating on behalf of a recovery worker who's trying to help a client, if that's your focus, if your focus is not like, oh my God, look at Sofie, how passionate she is, how much she wants to have that improvement for this client, and the problem is with them. It's like, so I do try to tell myself that, but yeah, I'm not where you are yet, and I'm not, and I wish I was. And what you said about suicidal ideation and wishing to, for me it's like some nights I go to bed and it's not that I want to do something to harm myself, but sometimes I go to bed and I think, it'd be so easy if I didn't have to wake up tomorrow morning. Easy if that's, I'm tired, I'm exhausted of life almost, because there's been too many battles, there's been too many burnouts, and sometimes I do feel like that. And actually strangely this weekend, I've slept from 1 o'clock, and I stay up quite late, so I slept from 1 o'clock in the morning right through till 11 o'clock in the morning, because I needed that sleep, because during the week I don't sleep. I suffer with insomnia because I have so much anxiety about the work environment. And also when I have to go into work, I don't deal very well with public transport, so I don't need to start till 9 o'clock, but I'm there at 7:30 because I can't manage the amount of people that are on the train if I were to come in for 8:45. But I'm actually an evening person, so I sleep from 1 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I rush, get in the shower, rush to work. So I'm constantly exhausted. I'm always very, very tired, and that for me, if I then have a lot of conflict at work, I do, and I've been told off for being honest about that as well. Like I've mentioned this, like I'm suffering with suicidal ideation because I'm having a lot of anxiety at the moment. And when I say that, it's frowned upon, like almost like you can't have that kind of honesty. And it's strange because we work with people in the homeless and addiction sector, and they're constantly like mentioning things related to being suicidal, but as professionals we're not allowed to even say I don't feel like waking up in the morning. And I find that's like we can't be honest whatsoever about any kind of negative experiences.
And these are all normal feelings. What you're feeling there is all really normal, because I know that I do it, and I say do it because I do it. It isn't like I have done it. There are times now when I'm exhausted or whatever, and I go to bed and I do think the same. Previously, years ago, I thought it and then thought more of it, like actually there is no way out here, that kind of stuff. Whereas now I get the feelings, then I've got my toolkit and stuff, and I talk to people or whatever to move through it. But they're totally natural things, and I phone the Samaritans and things like that from time to time, and these things should be normal to be spoken about, I think, and that's certainly something I advocate for. But the being tired as well from overwhelm, like I notice this sometimes when I work. There was a few weeks ago, I don't know if Ben remembers, it was a Friday, he tried to phone me in the afternoon. I'd fallen asleep after my lunchtime meeting, and I would have worked normally for another couple of hours. I caught up later that evening and did a couple of training courses actually, but that's because I'd worked so hard, especially on the Tuesday, Wednesday, that on the Thursday I did like a normal day's work. The Monday I did a normal day's work. The Tuesday and Wednesday were like my ADHD, I'm on it, I'm hyper-focused, I can't stop to even go to the toilet, which isn't healthy either, but I was stuck in it. And by Friday, I was knackered. So I did what I needed to in the morning, and then accidentally fell asleep. And I needed it, just like you needed that sleep as well. So
I think it was important what you said there around burnout. So I was going to come in because, but the conversation flowed really well. It's like some of the stuff I'm doing. So I'm going through therapy for autism and ADHD. He sort of does both. So we're trying to unpick some of that stuff. But us two struggle chronically with being able to validate myself. But I've got a scrapbook and I've put all my validation stuff in it. Stuff that means something to me. It's really helping at the moment. It's helping my burnout. So when I have a particularly a bad day or a bad hour, or someone says something that triggers me or whatever, I pick that book up and I have a little look for it, because that right sizes my brain in terms of, you know, it could be a sales number at work that I've particularly done great at. It could be, you know, a good holiday. It could be something that's just a walk in a park. It could be, you know, going to Arsenal Football Club that I love. You know, there could be some great stuff in it. When I've helped a friend out, when I've gone to a fellowship because of my addictions, and I'm you know, I'm clean, but like I do a lot for fellowship. So that's really something that's helped me with burnout. The other thing is and I have to put it as an alarm in my phone, but I have to have 45 minutes a day walk somewhere, and I have to have it, and I have to put the alarm on my phone, otherwise I miss it. Because what that does, I put my headphones on for you know, I want to block out the world. I can get sensory overload, so I put my big headphones on like those, and I go for a 45-minute walk. It may be listening to a podcast, it may be listening to songs. Sometimes it actually is just with the headphones on with nothing, so people don't talk to me.
Yeah.
But it's like helping me. What it does, it helps me right size and calm down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I get it, because also with the public transport. So not many people know this, but like I don't use public transport at all. The underground, I cannot use it.
Mm.
So I drive. I live outside London. I drive into London. It takes 2 hours, and people can't understand it. I just physically can't do it. Even at your times, 5 o'clock, I can't do it. Can't get on that underground. And the odd occasion that I've had to do it, I'm sweating, I'm anxious, I'm fearful. I get to the other end, my days are right off. My days are right off. I'm not getting back out of that. I'm there for the day. The only way out of that is sleep, and hopefully tomorrow's better. You know? So it's really, really important, like, around that stuff, because some people just don't get it, why I do some of the stuff. And that goes back to my misunderstood. You know, they just say, oh, well, why don't you, it's 8 minutes in the train and it's 32 minutes in the car. Why don't you just jump on the train with me? You know, but I just can't do it. I just cannot do it. It's like here, Chris travels by train. I drive. You know, and that's okay. We accept each other, you know. But it's like, I'm sure he thinks sometimes, why don't he get the train with me? We live roughly in the same area. Or I'm thinking, why doesn't he get in the car with me, right? He's doing it for convenience. He lives near a train station. It's easy for him to access. Puts his headphones on and he's cool and he's calm. You know, I'm doing it because of a necessity. I just can't do the other thing.
But why shouldn't we have these conversations as standard when we go to work or whatever, when we're with people, when we're talking about a job? Because to be an inclusive workplace, you need people to be able to come in and do their job to the best of their abilities. And, you know, in my job, I go to other buildings sometimes. I'm lucky, because if I had the same kind of requirements as you there, Ben, I'd want to be able to go in and say, do you know what, I do want to do this job still. There's no reason why I can't do it, but I'm going to have to get a taxi there rather than get the train, and that might cost some money or whatever. But this should be the normal thing to talk about, because everyone should have that opportunity to do what I'm doing or whatever. And it shouldn't be a problem to say, I don't like the tube, or not I don't like the tube, that's a flippant comment, that's not what you mean at all, is it? It's like, I can't travel on the tube, I can't travel, I don't feel comfortable, and that's absolutely fine. It should be fun to talk about.
Yeah, that's something that I feel uncomfortable to be fully honest on as well, because for me, it's, if I don't have a space to sit, I get extremely, extremely anxious. And even sometimes traveling in to be at work in Soho by 7:30, I sometimes don't get a seat, and sometimes I arrive at work and I'm crying and I'm so happy that nobody's gonna be there for a while, because I've got, you know, my makeup has gone all over my face, and I've got to go to the toilet and completely redo the makeup that I did in the morning, because I'm crying so much. But my brain doesn't even function until about 10 o'clock in the morning. So I'm there so early just to make it for that 9 o'clock, because it's, but I could easily come in at 11 o'clock, and that would suit me much better, because I would still, it would be the same, it would be the same as traveling in for 7:30. It's the 9 o'clock that is the difficulty. But I know that I can't have that conversation. I can't say, can I come in at 11 o'clock? Because also, I hate hot desking. So what that coming in at 7:30 does is I always have my desk.
Yep.
And if I came in at 11 o'clock, someone else would sit at that desk. And and it would be too difficult for me to say this is my desk. So I don't have to argue about my desk coming in that early, but this is why I'm always tired, because it's too early for me, but I can't have that conversation.
I think we've talked really heavily about work, and that's great. Yeah, we met on LinkedIn. I think that's really good. Because I think it's important that people can feel to share this. One of the first posts I see you done, and I think it's always stuck in my mind. But what really struck me was your husband. Mm-hmm. You put a post up about saying along the lines of, I've got the most, I think he was 70 or 60, 70.
He's 67.
67. So it was his birthday.
Yeah.
And you put a post up, and it was probably one of the most loving posts I've seen on LinkedIn. And I thought, what a guy. Because you talked about how he supported you in bits. What do you do in your home life, or not necessarily your home life, but how do you navigate away from work, like hobbies or things that you do? Like, how do you find all that, and how do you get through it?
So with my husband's and I's relationship, what we have in common is the fact that we're different, so we really understand each other. And at home, you can see I'm here with my dog, and she's a very big part of what I do outside of work. So you said you walk 45 minutes a day. I walk an hour and a half a day on a working day. And on a non-working day, on Saturdays, I walk about 3 to 5 hours. On Sundays, it's about 2 to 4 hours. It just depends on... And so that's kind of... My husband works in the media industry. He's very much into film, television. We watch a lot of programs together, so that's our thing. And we talk about. He's always writing a film of some kind. He's always got a script. We used to write them together, and he at the moment he's writing one that he says it's gonna go somewhere. But we've written a lot of things together that, and then we just lose interest until another script and another story idea comes up. So that's kind of like what we're into and what was drawn to us. When we met, I was still suffering from bulimia. So it's just kind of how I managed my emotions, and that was something that I had never, because I'd never been with anyone for longer than 3 weeks before meeting my husband, and I had never told a partner that. And it's so sometimes when I'm stressed, and it was always when I was stressed, so it wasn't, to me, it was never to do with weight. It was always if I'm going through a stressful period at work, I will be extremely bulimic after work, and that's how I manage my emotions. So we met in 2000, and that's one of the first conversations that I had, and I kind of had it because I kind of thought, well, I'd rather push him away now by saying, showing him the most ugly side of me. And he was just like, oh, yeah, I'm in recovery from sex addiction. And I was like, oh. And he was like, so he understood, because that's how he used to manage his emotions. And he used to have that. And obviously he was in recovery, and he's still in recovery. But I think he was in recovery for about 3 or 4 years when we met. And obviously he's been in recovery that whole time. But I wasn't in recovery yet. But because he's 17 and a half years older than me, he understood that he was 43 when we met, and I was 25. So he understood that I just wasn't there yet. And that's kind of what binds us. And so we have a very honest relationship with each other. And when I'm going through, he had to go and set up. He was actually quite good in payroll employment. He did quite well, but he understands. He found it really hard, the relationship with people higher up than him. He did it, but he found he was acting it very well. But it still felt like an act to him. So he went self-employed at the age of 44. And now he's seen me struggle in a way. But the reason, I can't talk to him about it. He understands it. Sometimes he's his solution is for me to just go self-employed. You know, why don't you set up your own business? What will I do? Oh no, anything. You know, it's just. But yeah, so we have a lot of conversations like that, and so it's like that's what I almost do in my spare time, is like having someone that I can be myself with.
You said some really powerful stuff there, so I want to jump in. You know, I'm bulimic as well. I think that was the first post. You actually sent me a message after I posted on. If you ever want to reach out, send me a message after I commented on just having a relapse from bulimia, because I too regulated emotion through my food. You know, because I knew no other way.
Yeah.
And it got extremely worse once I put down drugs, because I was like, well, I can't do drugs anymore. What do I do now? So I do food. So, you know, I really appreciate that. But also, I think it's really important what you said there, because that's the trait of mine around... I told him the ugly side early on because I wanted to push him away then and later. That's me too. But what's so loving is he went,
Yeah.
I'm staying.
Yes. And that's something, you know, his mum abandoned him when he was 5. My mum abandoned us as well, but only for 4 years, but we didn't know where she was. So we both had experienced that abandonment. And very early on within the relationship, he said, I will never leave you. And that's given me like this enormous safety where I can be myself, and I can, like, you know, I can be, so, you know, sometimes I do say and do things that are maybe a bit mad, but, you know, when I was having bulimia still, because I only found recovery in 2010, from 2011 there was absolutely nothing anymore, but 2010 is really when I started, like, the recovery kind of started in 2010. But until that time, there was 10 years where he, especially after the birth of our son in 2005, my weight really dipped, and you know, I had to go to St. Anne's Hospital every day, and you know, and I was told that I was gonna be sectioned if my weight dropped even lower. So he had to go through all of that, you know, and see his wife be extremely thin. But for me, it was the same. It was how I managed emotions. And even though I haven't relapsed since 2011, but sometimes I do consider it, because when I'm having a difficult time at work, I will think, why don't I just be bulimic again? Because when I was bulimic and everyone was being awful, everything was awful at work and I couldn't express myself, what I then did is I come home after work, stuff my face, and it's almost like all these emotions, like they were replaced with food. And then letting the food out is like letting the emotions out. And what I do now is I write really long emails to people sometimes. And they get me in trouble because I send them to the wrong people. Because I send them to the people that I feel could change the emotions. And sometimes when I then get a reaction and people aren't very happy with me, and you know, they're not happy seeing that realness, like me showing them what's really going on for me, I just think, why don't I just be bulimic again? Because if I was bulimic, I wouldn't be having these conflicts. I wouldn't have the difficulties.
What's really important there is you chose not to. Why? You're 13 years. That is. I'll tell you why I don't today. Is because that's worse than someone telling me off. Is that the same with you?
For me, I have twice been told I had less than a week to live. And when that happened and they said, look, you're gonna get a heart attack, you're not, the first time that I was told that, I was 19 years old, and it was with my dad beside me, and said, she's not gonna live longer than a week. And I have the very strong belief that if I relapse, I will die. I really think I won't, because it's, you know, when I relapsed, I was never, before the birth of my son, I was never completely free of it. Yeah. Because I was always relapsing when I had stress at work, but then I had periods of not suffering for 2 or 3 months. So when I say I relapsed in 2005, I was not free, but it became really, really bad for 6 years, where it was every day. And I was told, she is going, you are going to die. This you're not going to survive this. And that was the second time that I was told that. So I really believe that if I do relapse, that I will die. So part of the reason that I haven't relapsed is because I'm scared of dying, which is strange, because I just said that I suffer from suicide ideation. But then when I think of relapse, I also think of dying at the same time. So I think that's like, oh, let me commit slow suicide by relapsing. And so because I don't want, obviously I don't want to die, like, because those thoughts of bulimia are linked to the thoughts of death. I'm not going there, because I literally think that that's going to be my slow suicide and obviously I don't want that for myself.
Yeah, I have similar. What I'd say there is, I don't know whether you suffer with this, but I've also got a fear of death. Does that go on for you? Like, because I feel out of control. I feel when I'm using food, weirdly, I feel in control, but I'm so out of control. Mm-hmm. And that's how I feel. It's a bizarre thing that goes on. I go for a ritual around food. I'll eat a certain amount of foods. I'll know exactly how many calories in a certain way in a certain time frame. And then will make myself be sick. I feel in control of doing that. So I feel out of control with all my emotions. But I feel in control doing that. But actually, that is when I'm the most out of control. Then what comes for me is the death thing. And then I start to panic and anxious because I've got a fear of death. That's what sort of goes on for me. And I find it hard to regulate that. Like, I think people don't realise that, 10% of people that die under 50 have got an eating disorder in this country. And people don't realise that. It's really an unseen disease. And out of that 10%, 72% commit suicide.
So I don't have a fear of death. So it's like, even like I don't want to die due to an eating disorder, but I'm not actually scared of dying. Yeah. That's why when I go to bed and I think, if I don't wake up tomorrow, that was going to be easy. I'm going to have I think if I don't wake up tomorrow, I'm going to have an easy day because I won't have a day. So it's like, I don't really have a fear of death. I have to say, but I wouldn't like to have a slow death. And I think if I relapsed with bulimia, it would be slow death. And it's the same, like, so I would hate to be diagnosed with something that would mean a slow death. So I have no fear of death, but I have fear of slowly dying. I kind of want to go out with all my energy. I want to be fully energetic, and and sometimes when my husband doesn't like that. He thinks I'm quite morbid in my thinking, but I'm like, oh, I think 80 is a good age to die. And he's like, why do you say that? Because he's 67, so he thinks that's only 13 more years to go. And I'm like, yeah, because when I meet someone who's 80, they're still sprightly, but when I meet them at 90, they're like, and I don't want to be like that.
It depends on the 90-year-old. It depends on them. Some of them are really sprightly still. Some of them they really are.
Yes.
But I think, like, on that, I'm someone who's not scared of dying either. Actually, I've worked through so much stuff in my life that I'm kind of comfortable with it now. But that's a very different thing to say I don't want to be here, because that's not the case at all. But I did write a blog a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, which was about quietening my head and my thoughts, and I felt the only way that could ever happen was maybe to not be here. But then I was like, but actually, do I even know that? So would I really want to try that? Probably not right now. But I think what I'd like to talk about actually is you said about bringing the food back up was like getting rid of all of the emotions. And then you've said about, but you don't do that now, and you'll send an email to somebody. It might be the wrong person, all that kind of stuff.
It always is the wrong person.
So it's another way of doing it, but maybe not the best way. Something I have picked up on, though, is that you write poetry and things like that. And I'm wondering, is that another way that you kind of do try and help your emotions, try and regulate yourself? Because that sounds a very sensible way, a useful way, and an inspiring way as well, actually. Do you want to let us know about that? Yeah, no.
So I do. There's different things I do. I will take a song. Like one of the songs that I reworked was Dolly Parton's Working 9 to 5, and I made it autistic, like as an autistic person working 9 to 5, and how that is, like, you know, the commotion, getting to work. So I do that kind of stuff. And then I also write poetry, original poetry as well. I mean, for Autism Acceptance Month, I looked at many different poems, and I reworked them all into one poem, and then I posted that on our internal site. So for me, there's a lot of power in words. And yeah, the only problem that I do slightly have is because I'm constantly seeking for this validation, I then would want the poem to be read by the person who's caused the emotions that caused the poem. Because I really want to be understood, and that's my biggest kind of problem. I really want people to understand me. So I would then want to be like, oh, here's my poem that I wrote when I was riding on these emotions that you caused. Can you read the poem? And that's what I want to do, and you just can't. People don't want to be confronted with the negative emotions, or not the negative, or the difficult emotions that they cause. They don't want you to say, I'm feeling this down, and you've caused this, but look, I've got this great poem. But that's really what I would like to do, but I don't do that with the poetry. So I do write the emails, and, you know, just trying to be understood all the time. But yeah, the poetry is a way of expressing myself that I do enjoy. Yeah.
I think there's becoming a lot more awareness about neurodiversity, and there's certainly a bigger movement, actually, and I'm finding some solace in that, because I can come in and speak to you today, or you come in to speak to us. You and I'm getting identification, and I can speak to someone else, and I suppose that's where I'm finding validation. I'm finding validation in people like me. I want to talk to people like me because they get me. You know, when I say to someone the other day that's got autism, I don't get on trains, not because I don't want to, I just can't. They understand.
Yeah.
I speak to someone else and they go, yeah, but it's 8 minutes, 32. You know, I'm like, it don't matter to me. I am not getting on that train. We're coming to an end, but I thought that what would be really useful right before the end is to sort of, you know, I think you're fantastic. I think, like, you've gone through a lot, right? And I think that a lot of people like us do, and that's why a lot of us don't actually stay in employment, because we want to run, or me particularly want to run away. You know, so we are the minority that suffer with certainly autism. You know, so congratulations on that. I think that's really important that we share that. Like, yeah, we're doing a podcast for hope. So we've shared quite a lot of stuff around like difficulties and being misunderstood at work, but actually you've navigated through those, same as I have, same as Chris has. So what's your message to it? So someone picks up this podcast, what's your message to them if they're similar to you or me? What advice would you sort of give them?
The advice for me would be to focus on your champions, the people that support you. And, you know, it's sometimes hard to know who's genuine in that immediately, but you will get to know. You will find out. You will know who really is in your corner, and to just focus on them and allow them. You know, if you can find someone who can mentor you as well, then I've had periods within employment where I've had a mentor, and I've always benefited from that. And you know, just put your faith in yourself, but also in those people who champion you. Just, you know, if sometimes people let me know, I like you. They actually tell me, I like you. I like who you are. You know, I like the way that you express yourself. And they actually say the complete opposite as all the people that I listen to too much. They don't mind you know, the people that say, yeah, you write a long email, but you really express yourself, and just focus on the people that champion you, that support you, and allow them to guide you through your difficulties as well. So that's really what I would say to them. Yeah.
So thank you for sort of sharing a lot of your story. In hindsight, would you think about getting a much earlier diagnosis with your stuff that's gone on, and do you think that would have helped either your working environment or your relationships?
Well, so when I was diagnosed, the woman who did the assessment, which in total was like 9 hours, it was a very thorough assessment. She said she'd never seen such a clear case of a misdiagnosis, and she had worked in the eating disorders units and actually encountered a lot of girls who are actually autistic, and that's the reason why they had eating disorders. So I do kind of wonder how different life would have been with the diagnosis, but there also was a lot of misunderstanding about autism. And I think I would have really struggled if people had assumed I had no empathy just because of the diagnosis. So in a way, I'm glad that the diagnosis came when the world was more ready to understand what autism actually means, and they know that we have hyper empathy and that we just express ourselves differently. So I think everything kind of happens for a reason. I don't know if I wouldn't have had an eating disorder if I had had the diagnosis. I'm not entirely sure. I also wonder if I had declared being autistic, would I even have been employed in the jobs that I struggled in? They probably wouldn't even have given me the job, to be honest. My current job is the first time that I declared my diagnosis before getting the job. But I don't know if I declared it. I can't remember if I declared it in my application, but the person who was my first line manager, he definitely knew about my diagnosis. But yeah, before then I wasn't diagnosed upon employment. So I don't know if I would want to have had it earlier. I think I would have wanted to understand myself earlier, but there's so much more that's known now about autism, so I think I benefit from that.
So if there's someone out there now, if you were 20-year-old now, would you now the world's in a better place?
I think so. I think I would have liked to know. I think I would have probably, I think maybe my whole career would be different.
Yeah.
Maybe I wouldn't have because I've been trying so hard to fit into the office world, and I'm still trying hard to fit into the office world. And now I'm 49. I've done a lot of all my work experience and my investment in myself. It's like I feel too tired and exhausted to do something completely different again. But I think if I was 20, I would really think, what are good jobs for autistic people where they don't have to battle office politics?
Yeah.
It's like I think I would just, or is there an office where everyone's autistic and nobody has to do office politics? Like I would research that probably. So I think I would benefit from. I would definitely want to be diagnosed and just see, like where, because at the moment I'm trying to change the world that I'm in.
Yeah.
And maybe if I was diagnosed earlier, I would try to find a world where I fit in more.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to change the world that I'm in. They're all going to get to know me and accept me for who I am eventually, the ones that don't already.
And that's good and that's right, because actually somebody who's 20 years old now, I hope will be able to fit in more than they could have done when we were 20 years old. And I hope in 20 years' time, when a 20-year-old has autism, ADHD, bulimia, whatever it is, it's just able to come and go to work and be honest, say who they are and fit into the world of work, the social element of life and everything. It just needs to be a different place where we can all be comfortable as ourselves and be our unique selves.
It's so important. So like I had a bad day on Thursday, and someone sort of that I talk to regularly, one of my champions, said, "You're the torchbearer, Ben." Because that stuff really sits with me. I feel I've got a responsibility to show others that they can do it, but also to change some of the judgment and stigma that's attached to some of this stuff. And when he said that to me, we had a real honest conversation, because I find it hard. And he said, yeah, but you are changing. People are slowly changing in the world. They're slowly becoming more acceptable. They're so slowly maybe accepting, like, that people do things differently. So, Sofie, thanks for coming in today. I think it's been an absolute wonderful session. I've personally got a lot out of it, so thank you. For all our listeners out there, if you need any help, obviously reach out to us. We're on socials, LinkedIn, Twitter and YouTube. You can also email me at ben@theguidinglight.co.uk and I will respond. So thank you, Sofie.
And thank you for having me.
As we wrap up another amazing and inspiring episode of The Guiding Light, remember, although your journey is unique, you most certainly are not alone. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to explore, reach out please across our socials or via our website www.theguidinglight.co.uk. Until next time, take care of yourself.